with the SCL. We are the Society of Composers and Lyricists. We work with film, well, with sound and film, and television, and all sorts of um, other media, and now including video games as well. We have a great panel here. We have John Paper, who recently scored Microsoft Studios, Remedy Entertainment's live-action series Quantum Break. He developed exclusively for Xbox One, and which has been hailed as a masterpiece by Gaming Trend. Quantum Break. Quantum Break was the #1 best-selling Xbox game worldwide in April 2016, and is currently the largest-selling Microsoft release for Xbox One. So, nice job. And next we have Tom Salta here, who has received widespread industry acclaim for his world-class produced scores featured in films, games such as Halo, Fall of Reach, animated series, Killer Instinct Season 3, let me see here, Original Soundtrack Award, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Ghost Recon, Future Soldier, From Dust, Prince of Persia, Forgotten Sands, Red Steel. It goes on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. And now here's more. Advanced Warfighter and Hawk series, original songs and adaptations for the world's #1 dance game series. Nice job. And and then we have here Mr. Ben Green, who is a composer, sound designer, and technical wizard. Originally from London, he has worked with a broad selection of clients, including the BBC, Sky, Lacoste, Ed Baker, LSA, and many others. He brings a deep experience in VR audio and state-of-the-art location recording to cinematic and games. And then, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we have Elizabeth Lim. Her music can be heard in the PBS documentary American Umpire, as well as in the New York Times 6-part series Family Entrepreneurs, the short film A Tribute to Discomfort, and Ubisoft's video game Cloudberry Kingdom, Giant Space Cats Revolution 60, and the upcoming Japanese learning RPG KOE by Strawberry Games, and the upcoming Jane Austen MMORPG Ever Jane by 3 Turn Productions. And over here at the end we have Mark Roos, who's a very, very incredible composer whom I've worked with a lot. And you did something for Xbox, right? Okay. So everyone here has experience in games, and they will know how to get music, or how to help you get music into games if you're interested, on all, not just music, but also like sound effects, sound design. So remember, the SCL offers a lot of seminars on how to do these things and how to get involved and meet people. So it's very, very helpful. You can either join on the site, or you can just attend the seminars for just like a fee, right?
We're actually we're on the third floor. There's C9 upstairs. We'd love to see all of you.
Upstairs at the expo, not.
We have free pens.
Yeah.
And pads.
And pads.
And pads.
So consider it. Think about it. Okay.
And as I said, you can join. What is the membership?
SCL.com.
SCL.com. Yeah. So even if you don't join, you can still attend all the seminars, and it's a very, very helpful thing. So, Mark, I'm going to hand this over to you. I know you have some questions for everyone, so you can hand this over to Mark.
First, thanks for coming. We're really thrilled to have all of you. We really appreciate it. So, the very first question that I would love to ask, that I would love people to like to know is, how did you get into scoring video games?
So I grew up playing video games. I think my favorite game when I was growing up was Donkey Kong Country, and I I would hum the tunes and try to play the drum part on my lap. And I just loved it so much that I thought it would be something really cool to do later on. Because I was studying writing music. And I think that was probably when it's like, oh, and science. I also.
I assume that question should go down this way.
Let's go with it. Let's go with that flow.
Yeah, so I started doing some gaming through my connections in film and TV. So it was actually the game that I'm going to talk about today was done with a production company called Lifeboat Productions, and they produced the TV show side of Quantum Break. And so that got me into working with both the game side and the TV side. But I grew up, like you growing up, listening to and playing games as well. So it's been something that I've always been interested in.
Gotcha. I should confess straight away, I don't really do music video games. I'd love to, but my involvement's more on the sound design side. But like my fellow panelists here, I'm the same. I was kind of born at the epicenter of the video games explosion, completely irradiated, and wouldn't want it any other way. So I think, yeah, I mean, up in this brain is logged faithfully all the sound effects and music of pretty much every 80s cabinet game and video game that I could get my hands on. But I think I've always been drawn to the sound design side of things. Even as a kid, I used to go around improving on the sounds of things that I felt were somehow disappointing. My parents would hear me making odd noises because the fridge door didn't close right or something. So I think for me, it's just been meeting an inevitability, really.
My journey into video games is a bit more of a long-winded answer. I started in music production through the 90s. I wanted to be just a record producer, songwriter, that's it. And then in 2001, when iTunes came out and Britney Spears came out and the industry started to collapse, I started to, no, I'm just
Connected
joking.
event.
Well, actually, I'm not joking, but it wasn't because of Britney. So it was this kind of thing where, the game Halo came out and the video game industry started really evolving and even the music becoming a lot more westernized. And I started listening to things like Rainbow Six and Prince of Persia and Halo. And I'm like, wow, this is the future. This is the future of music. I see a future in this. So, for me, it was scary because I was already like 30 years old, and I'm like, how am I gonna start over again? I have a kid, I have a mortgage, I have a wife, I have, what am I supposed to do? And so I made all this music that I thought would be video game music because that's easy, I'm in the record business, I could do video game music. And so I put some CDs together. I made 100 CDs. I went out to E3 very proudly, like ready to go up to EA and say, hey, I worked on the Share record. I bet you want me to propose your game. And that didn't work at all. So after I realized that they didn't really care about new wannabe composers, I came home with my tail between my legs and all 100 CDs, and then I had to regroup, and I got the impression that, well, okay, look, what are my assets? What can I do? I'm good at making records. I know how to do soup to nuts, how to get it done, and so I got the idea that artists in the video game business were looked at as very cool, like Crystal Method or Chemical Brothers or Moby. I started seeing artist music being licensed in sports games, and driving games. I'm like, well, no one knows who I am anyway, so why don't I just come back in a different outfit as an artist? And so I put together a whole album under my new artist name, which is Atlas Plug. Atlas is salsa backwards. Plug is like opposite of unplugged, which is acoustic, and mine was electronic. Anyway, so I put this whole thing. I signed a publishing deal with a company that was very good at placing in video games. And before I finished the record, Microsoft came to the publisher and said, we want to place 4 songs in this game called Rally Sport Challenge 2 in 2003 or 4. And so that was the beginning. That's how it started. So within that year, I got placements in that. I got Project Gotham, Crackdown, and it was like this, like, who's this new art? Atlas Plug, whoa, my God, it was hitting the scene. It was like, hey. So the plan worked, and then years later, I got an agent, and then I started pitching original scores, getting an opportunity to compose something original just for a game, because that's what I really wanted to end up doing. So I started with a PC adventure game, And then a couple more years later, I got an opportunity to score Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. I was pitching on that against like 20 other composers, and they chose me, luckily. And so that kind of put me on the map. And so I just kind of stayed visible and really pushed hard and marketed myself and kept doing more and more and in the game. And you know, 15 years later, here I am. So that's sorry for the long answer, but that's really how it happened.
Awesome. So I'd love to actually go to, we actually have some clips for you guys that we actually like to look at, and then we'll talk about the next moment. So the first moment we're going to do is Tom has a video here that he's going to show, and we're going to kind of pause it every once in a while and have you.
You sure you want to start with that? Or, oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, fine.
And
Okay. That's fine.
anyway, so let's go ahead and start with that, and then we'll pause it.
All right, so this is basically, I'll just set it up. This is a behind-the-scenes video that I made when I was working on Killer Instinct Season 3 with Cell Dweller. Cell Dweller is an incredible artist and a friend of mine. So I brought him onto the project, and every character, I don't know if you're familiar with the game, but it's a fighting game. And so every character has a very distinct musical track that goes with it. And the music has to adapt to every moment of the game fight. So I'm going to show you a little behind the scenes of what went into this character called Mira. She was a, well, you'll see who she is.
We got some input from Microsoft about her world, her backstory, and then Tom and I could translate that into what does that sound like musically. So, Tom?
Welcome, Killer Instinct fans! Was that over the top?
Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, I'm in a room way too much by myself. That's not good for you. So Mira was presented to us as this crazy Russian female vampire underground cathedral chick. And so it's like, okay, how do we put that into music? And yeah, so let's see how we put it.
And I remember Tom sending me the character intro. It's just this basic kind of like little idea with these little kind of stabs, and then I was like, oh, and then I start throwing drums and a bass that I ran through a micro synth. And that started growing. Then we started adding vocals over the top and bigger orchestral sounds layered in there. And by the time we're done, we get this kind of massive character intro that Mira can walk out to.
So you know, when I hear descriptions for these characters, I like to try to take things literally. And how do we literally cover all those bases? Crazy, female, vampire, underground cathedral, you know, chick. And it's like, okay, so... All right, vampire. So how about a violin? Okay, because a violin, we can kind of kill a lot of birds there. We can kind of do, let's say, we can get the vampire thing with the violin. We could do the Russian, you know, by doing certain melodies that are evocative of, you know, that remind you of Prokofiev or something like this. You know, all these dissonant intervals, and it could also cover a little bit of the crazy too. So we wrote some melodies, and here's some footage of one of the violinists who came in and recorded. So that you can start to see the crazy and the thing coming together. So then another thing, so we got the female vampire chick thing, right? So how about this could be a nice opportunity to bring in a really fantastic female vocalist. And I happen to be friends with this wonderful singer. Her name is Jeanette Vecchione, and she's a world-renowned coloratura soprano. I'm sorry. But anyway, So she could do all these super high notes and jump around all over the place. So I said, well, this is the perfect track for her. So this is some things in the studio.
So let's do it a cappella first.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead. Oh my God.
Okay. Yes, so good. So they were like, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do is we want to bring this home all the way, so and make it super exaggerated and over the top because you can see where it's gone. So let's just finish it up. And so we scraped together whatever extra budget we could to put it into a live orchestral recording, and we recorded this orchestra in Macedonia, and we did it remotely, and so this is what ended up happening. It really kind of brought it home.
I've been looking forward to this reunion, sister.
All right.
Yes.
There you go. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. So next, we'd love to actually go to John's video, and I noticed you had a couple of things that you wanted to
Yeah.
comment about.
So Quantum Break, which is what I'm going to show you, is a integration of a live action scripted TV show with the actual game. And so if you play the game in a certain way, it brings you along different junction points. So each time you play the game, you could watch a different show with a different outcome, with different scenes. And so as the composer, I was trying to find how do I integrate that and how do I approach each scene differently. So the video that I'll play gives a 1-minute overview of the game, and then I do the same scene but 4 different times. It's subtle music, but you can notice the different ways of scoring that scene. So I think if you play it, you'll see. And it's very subtle. This isn't mine. It's the other video. Oh. Yeah. You want, is the other one not in there?
We only had one, which was sent over.
I put 2 videos in the Dropbox.
Yeah.
Well, we can play this video too. It's fine. I mean,
Yeah, there's only one, which was.
no, I can.
Can you talk about this one?
Let's see if it's. No, I can talk. I mean, this one's just as.
Yeah, it was just.
It shows you the level of the
Yeah, this was.
I can send it. I have it on my. I can send it right now quickly if you want.
Okay, if you want, maybe we
And then-
can do that, and then why
You
don't
could jump on
maybe
to
we
Benedict.
can jump to
Sure.
Benjamin really quick. Do you mind?
Benedict.
Benedict, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, let's give it a
You want to
spin.
speak a little bit about this one?
Yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to explain this, otherwise this is going to seem a little surreal. This is a very short clip, which exemplifies one of my favorite kind of themes in the world of sound design, which is an incredibly creative, expansive world to be in, and it's enormous fun. But one of our main themes is we are kind of deceivers. We're engaged in subterfuge. We're tricking you the whole time, and this is one of the most entertaining parts of working in that field. This can be like emotionally, you don't realize we're stirring you emotionally with creepy sounds. It could be in the simplest form of the word subterfuge, in that, you know, any number of sounds will work for a particular activity. We can trick you and swap in different sounds for different objects. And figuring those out is quite good fun. I've got a little quote from a major sound designer called Walter Murch, who I'm sure you've heard of, that puts it better than I could. There are many, many nouns for the act of looking, a glance, a glimpse, a peep, but there's no noun for the act of listening. In general, we don't think primarily about sound, so I have a different perspective on the world. I can construct soundscapes that have an effect on people, but they don't know why. It's a sort of subterfuge. And I love that because that's quietly what I'm doing when I'm substituting one sound for another. And it's one of the most entertaining parts of what I do. So what you're going to see now is a little clip of 3 short extracts of Rain, which as a Londoner is a key theme in my life. And since I moved to LA, I miss it terribly. And each of the 3 things, one of them has been overdubbed with the sound of frying bacon. And so the sub game here is to try and figure out which of the 3 clips is actually bacon. Would you need? Anybody have? Yeah, I think I heard the right answer there. This is one of my favorite statements in life. It's all bacon, baby.
It's all bacon.
But do you see how that really did the trick there? And that's one of our main things. You'd be surprised the amount of things we can substitute. You know, pouring out some powder can sound more like liquid being spilled than actually spending your time tipping over liquids. So yeah, that was just a little exemplifying of what we do. We need to make up something new for this one. That's a great question. I think there's a standard sort of list of go-tos where you can substitute X for Y that are quite well known for sound designers. Yeah, I mean, actually, these are surprisingly searchable. But, you know, whenever you hear someone getting properly and horribly stabbed up in a horror film, that's always cantaloupe or watermelon. Anytime you need that disturbing sound of bones getting crunched to the breaking point, that is celery. Just go out, buy some celery, experiment with it on a decent mic. Watch out for the splashes. Snapping bones is almost always carrots pitched down. But then, as you say, you know, there's an area where you want to kind of depart from that, and that's down to you. That's about exploring the detail within sounds. I mean, one of my go-to things I love doing, I'm a Logic user, and we have a very happy integration with our sampler and the audio. I can select any amount of files, send them straight to the sampler, and be pitching them down straight away. And that's how you discover, you know, that the sound of your cat meowing 2 octaves down is the most demonic thing that you've ever heard.
What's the sampler?
Yeah.
What's the sampler that you like to use?
Oh,
Logic.
For me, in Logic, it's got the EXS24 built in. I used to be an old Akai head with the sort of, you know, the 19-inch rack mount stuff. I must have had 6 of those things. But yeah, the EXS24 is a delight. And any sampler at all, you know, even if you're working with like Ableton Live, I think that has that thing simpler. And you can just literally select audio and drop it into 5 slots and be mangling sound straight away. Thanks, good question.
So I've actually got a question for Elizabeth, quick, and that is, when you were scoring your first game, how much of the gameplay or of the details of the game did you actually get to see before you started writing and being asked to compose music?
So my first game was actually Collaboration Film, which came out I think in 2014. And that was a bit unusual because the game was mostly done, and I was a late addition to the team. But usually, in the games that I've worked on more recently, I get the blueprints of the game, we'll say, and it's pretty cool to work with a developer in that sense because I feel like I'm a good part of actually helping them shape the story, and because it's really nice to talk about the characters and get to know them a bit in musically and story-wise.
Tom, how about for you? How much involvement do you actually? At what point are you involved in the process?
Yeah, I've been all over the map. So the one extreme would be there's nothing's ready to see, and I get an Excel spreadsheet that says Battle 1, Battle 2, Battle 3, Tension 1, Tension 2, Tension 3. That's how I scored Hawks, Tom Clancy's Hawks. Believe it or not, you would think that for big budget thing, and they're going to give me the whole game to play. No, it was an Excel spreadsheet, and then the other side of the spectrum, I know it's a miracle. I don't know how that came together. And then on the other side of the spectrum is when I get to actually see something like go and play it. So Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, I was flown out to the studio. I sat in a room with a beta version of the game with the creative director, the producer, the audio director, and I was able to play it and ask questions and make suggestions on how we could do things, and can we do multi-layered, and then I bring in the percussion. It was like, wow. So that's the whole other, and I was able to get a capture of most of the game, and it says, okay, well, map 1, map 3, map 69, far, whatever it is, they would identify where they'd want music and how many minutes and loopable, and I was actually able to put a QuickTime movie in the background and loop it and do music that would fit. So that's the other end of the spectrum, and everything in between. So there's not a standard like, oh, well, you always get this. Not at all.
And then now, Benedict, I'd love to find out a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing in VR games.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my partner and I started this company, Echo VR, a couple of years ago with the mission of bringing proper spatialized sound to VR experiences. At the time, we weren't specifically involved with gaming, but we noticed that the whole VR thing was very visually led. The sound was being left behind. There wasn't this proper equivalency between what the eyes enjoyed and what the ears got to enjoy. So I've been exploring that spatializing universe for a while. But we've been on a number of projects. I've forgotten the exact nature of the question.
So the nature of the question was, what developments or what have you noticed in terms of the way that you work on sound design in VR?
Yeah, that is actually a very good question. Thank you. It is subtly different, actually, working on design for VR games as opposed to in the flat in ways that you wouldn't predict. Like, I don't find it different artistically. It's not like if you're doing 2 copies of the same game, one for VR and one for the flat. If you're creating the sound of an awesome starfighter with an anti-grav engine, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same asset. There are differences, I think, in terms of hardware and software. I monitor, because I can safely assume 95% of the people enjoying that experience will be in headphones. So it's the reverse of my usual world in audio, where I only use the headphones as kind of a magnifying glass to jump into the mix. I would never make EQ decisions or like level decisions normally on the basis of headphones. So they become crucial. I have 4 pairs now, from expensive to completely rubbish, so that I can get a good sense of how things are translating. So there's that kind of hardware side. There's the software side, where I think for game devs, you'll be looking at new SDKs that are more competent for the fully spatialized sound that we need, because we're in a proper sphere. Whereas, you have fabulous sound bars and multimedia speakers when you're playing in the flat, but they don't have to simulate a proper 360 feel. So there's awesome SDKs from Oculus, Phonon, or Steam Audio, I think it's now known as. It's been picked up by Steam. That's really great. There's the one from the Facebook 360 guys, which gives you the chance to put an ambisonic spatialized bed, which is really good on CPU. But I think for me, the main difference is understanding the consequences of the VR dynamic. In that, in gaming, whether you're on console or on the PC, you generally interact by going up to things and hitting the interact button. If you want to get into that tank, it's going to cue an animation, you'll be in the tank. If you need to pick up the object, it's done for you. Whereas in VR, I like to focus on the R as in reality, you know, we have hands and we already know what to do with them. And so I have to interact and communicate a lot more with the game devs to understand the mechanics of the thing that we're about to do. You know, like right now I'm working on some scary morgue-based game where we have to kind of reveal a corpse by pulling on the sheet. And I've already turned out a bunch of sheet sound effects that I Foleyed, but I don't know if this is a continual thing or are we going to whip that thing back? You know, it sounds, yeah, exactly. And I haven't seen gameplay footage of that yet because they haven't built that dynamic. So I've created these luscious sheet sounds, and I'm sure when I see the gameplay, it'll be plop.
You gotta be doing like throwing up sounds too as you do the sheet.
Yeah. Well, it's a nasty looking corpse. I think some people will kind of peek in slow-mo and I'll have to do a 30-second reveal sound. Sorry, I think there was procedural in
audio for this kind of stuff that you don't know the speed, so you would program it actually.
Oh, you mean like sort of runtime decisions versus baking it in?
Inside the game. So like a small, a very, very simple small with that would.
Oh, I see. No, generally we tend to try and do as much of the work on our end as possible. Yeah, and also because mobile platforms, we're sticking these things in the front of, so we don't have a gorgeous PC. So there's a lot of, that's one of the main decisions, to bake or not to bake. And you'll do a mixture of both. You know, we have more control, but again, it's this interactivity. Because you've got volumetric, I have no idea where the player's going to be in the space. So it's toughy.
We actually are very, very short on time. So
I'd love to actually go just really quick. We can actually
Sure.
talk after as well, though. Absolutely.
Yeah, we did figure it out. We had to get it from Dropbox, but
yeah.
it's here.
Awesome.
So
I'll just play this.
this
back
just
and then
explains
ask-
the point of like the junction points. I may not be able to talk about that much afterwards, but you know, I'm happy to talk outside there about it. But you'll notice the different scenes and the overall video. So
Up into the past. Tries to change things.
this is the
Undo
TV show.
mistakes. Only to find there's no changing the inevitable. Time is just one closed loop. No matter what I do, you and I, we always end up here. No matter what I do, time ends.
In everything you see. Do I stop before you're dead?
Now we go to the fourth scene. So this is scene number 1.
Dr. Emily,
Where's Paul? I need to speak with him.
right this way. Sophia,
You initiated it.
you were right, it was time.
Paul, have you taken your treatments? You can't go on without them.
You need to get to the lifeboat.
No, you need to come with me. You need to get them started. We need you.
Just go. Okay?
You just go, I'll be there.
So you play the game in a different way, and then you see this different scene. It starts the same.
Dr. Emily,
Yes, hi.
I need you to come with me.
I knew you wouldn't listen to me. It was a simple fail-safe. Once the
I
chrono...
know what it was. It can't be undone.
That was always the point, wasn't it?
It wasn't for you to decide when.
Different branch. It's great because that's the overlap.
I need to speak with you.
Right this way.
It's obviously a working video.
You initiated it. Paul, look at you. You need your treatment.
I don't need anything!
Listen to me. The time machine was different than Monarch's. It was Williams' original. I had a chance to examine its main board. There were key elements in its design that were blatantly different from ours. The accident, it wasn't an accident.
Same scene again, different branch.
Dr. Emerald,
Yes,
I need you to come with me.
It was a simple failsafe. Once the chronon levels reached their breaking point, I knew you wouldn't listen to me. Williams' machine. I saw his original. I had a chance.
So the idea is that it's virtually a choose-your-own-adventure game, and the plot changes. The final episodes are completely different from each other. So the TV show, it's a fully produced TV show, changes each time you play it, which is a really cool way to work with the game.
Panels will be available outside. We'd love to talk with you and see if we can answer any more of your questions. Again, we really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Kind of working.
Did that.